TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Stallion Cross Traffic, a Grade 1 winner and Unbridled Song's fastest racehorse ever with 116 Beyer speed. First foals are arriving now.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, we have a huge weekend of races to talk about, but first let's recap the Florida Derby. Of course, we had our number one in action. You know, he was going up against a champion, Nyquist, and a lot of people are a little concerned, you know, is he going to be able to handle these further distances? And I know it wasn't a major concern for you, but that was just some of the buzz that was out there. I got to tell you, man, your number one horse didn't look very good in the Florida Derby.
No, he didn't look good at all. And just to give you a piece of history about Mohaymen, you'll see here, he's making a move wide. He made his move to get in contention. Nyquist had it his own way over a sealed track. Obviously, speed plays at Gulfstream. We know that. He had a very comfortable race. Nyquist did. You see here, he starts to bear out a little bit, lose a little bit of focus. I think he's probably moving to the grandstand there, cheering at him a little bit. And Mohaymen is just completely empty. I mean, a horse that took forever to break his maiden, Majesto, now gets in the Kentucky Derby because he's there 3 lengths behind or so, Nyquist, and they're two horses that are in front of Mohaymen. We build this as a match race. And look, everybody's talked about it. Let's go to the bottom line here. There's no question in my mind that Mohaymen did not run his race. There's no question in my mind. It's not that you would look at this now and say, oh my God, Nyquist is so much better than Mohaymen. Look, the Beyer wasn't that strong for Nyquist over a sealed track and a comfortable trip. You expected him to do that. He just beat a horse that just broke his maiden right there, Majesto, by 3 lengths. It's not like he beat him by 10 in a fast race. So let's just call it what it is. Mohaymen didn't fire. Now, why did he not fire? Some people have the theory, okay, well, maybe he bounced. I don't personally believe that because I don't think he had hard races in the Holy Bull and the Fountain of Youth Stakes. I will say this. They ran 3 turf races before they ran the Florida Derby. It rained early in the day. It dried out.
Right.
Okay, they ran the Sir Shackleton Stakes, I believe it was, around 4:30. 2.5 hours later, basically, they run the Florida Derby on a sealed track after it rains again. Okay, and he's out there in the 4 or 5 path. I think it's very plausible to think that maybe he was just on a bad part of the track to where it was deeper or perhaps a little bit of peanut buttery, sticky type surface that took the starch out of him to where once he made his, I don't care how wide he went in terms of distance travel, he might have just been on a bad part of the track, John. Once he made his move, he was totally out of gas, turning for home from that point forward. So that's my excuse. Something happened. That was not Mohaymen. Okay, whether or not he would have beat Nyquist, if he'd have fired or not, we don't know that, okay? Bottom line is the horse did not fire. So where do we go from here now with 5 weeks leading up to the Derby?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I want to see. And when I'm looking at the TCI top 10, I got to say, man, as far as your number one horse, this horse takes the biggest drop that I think I've ever seen you do for a number one horse, you know, that didn't come out with a little injury or anything like that. Just a horse based off of performance, you know, and we were talking earlier before the show. The thing that was interesting about Mohaymen is that, yeah, it might have been peanut buttery, it might have been sticky, it might have been this, might have been that. But when he eyeballed Nyquist, he just quit, man. Like, that's what concerned me, is just to watch him drop back and let some, you know, less experienced horses kind of put him away there at the end as well.
It was the first stretch challenge he'd really ever faced of that magnitude. There's no question, but he didn't even try to really fight with him. I mean, he couldn't even get to his throat latch. And again, I don't know if it's is so much that Nyquist ran a fast race. Again, I just think Mohaymen just was not himself for whatever reason that day. So I do have to drop him. He stays in the top 5 because I want to see what everybody else does. We've made an evaluation on the talent. Now, look, Mohaymen, I'll go ahead and say it. Well, I mean, you know, write me down for this phrase right now in April of 2015. This is going to be a good horse by the time he retires. I mean, he's shown that talent and that quality. I have no question. He's a legitimate horse, in my opinion. So he belongs in the top 5. Now, he has history against him. You know, most of the time, a horse doesn't even hit the board in their final prep for the Derby. That's an indication they're out of form. That's an indication that coming back in 5 weeks in the Kentucky Derby, you know, Thunder Gulch did it. I think maybe Giacomo did it. Horses like that. But you rarely see a horse that runs that poorly, their final prep, come back in a month and win the Kentucky Derby. So you have to drop him and be concerned. However, I want to see him up close, and I'm not, the fact that he didn't come out with any physical issue, I still think the talent is there for Mohaymen to be a top 5 contender.
All right, so everybody's kind of talking about Mohaymen, but, you know, the thing that's interesting is that, you know, Nyquist did look great. You know, I mean, we got to give it to him. We're talking about what happened to Mohaymen, but, man, what about Nyquist? I mean, this horse has really done well. You only move him into the 3 spot there. I mean, he is the champion from last year. He defeats your number 1. You only move him into number 3.
Yeah, and I think he's a very deserving favorite for the Kentucky Derby just because he keeps winning. He's not running fast. He's not, running drop-dead speed figures that just make you say, wow, this horse has arrived. But he just keeps winning. So you have to give him credit. He belongs in the top 3 now. So I move him into the 3 spot based on that thinking. But a lot of people say, well, how come you don't have him number 1? I still have reservations with him being able to handle other legitimate speed horses in the Derby if it does, turn up to be a good pace. We're going to talk about a couple of these preps, John. We're finally seeing paces in some of these races. Santa Anita Derby has pace. Wood Memorial has pace. I think that's important because we've been seeing this Kentucky Derby, when California Chrome won it, last year when American Pharoah won it, yes, they were the best horses, but they got the trips they wanted on the front end in very manageable pace scenarios. How's the Kentucky Derby pace going to be? If it turns out to be ordinary in my eyes going in, I'm going to move Nyquist up because I'm going to say, well, he's maybe the best horse, and if he's going to trip out and get a pretty moderate pace to be able to finish off of, that's going to take a lot of the closers out of their game, and I do think that will move Nyquist up. But as it stands right now, looking in on this, I still question him at a classic distance, so to me, he's number 3.
All right, well, let's move now to the horse that you put in at number 1, and let's talk about the Santa Anita Derby for a minute because More Spirit is going to be running this weekend, and we'll see what happens to your TCI top 10 after this weekend. He's going against Dancing Candy. Joel, it's a horse that beat him last time out. You talked about pace. They kind of let that horse have it on the front end. You see More Spirit was a little further back. What do you think they'll do in this race?
I have a simple analysis on this race. There's finally speed. There was not speed in San Felipe. Look, Dancing Candy got off on a comfortable lead over a track that carries speed, and he won. He's a good horse. He'll get some challenges in here. He has to not only go another 16th of a mile, which won't be an issue at all. More Spirit's going to like that extra 16th of a mile to close into, but most importantly, when you look at horses like Iron Rob, a sprinter like Denman's Call drawing the rail in here, look at some of these horses in this race that didn't run last time in San Felipe. They have speed. That's going to be a key ingredient, in my opinion, to get this pace a little more lively, really challenge Dancing Candy's ability to stock and finish off of it and still hold off a closer like More Spirit. I want to see it from Dancing Candy before I'm willing to anoint him and put him in the top 5 for Derby contenders.
All right, well, let's move now to Aqueduct and let's talk about the Wood Memorial. Joel, there was a lot of movement here with people trying to decide, are they going to run into Bluegrass? Are they going to ship up and go to Aqueduct? Tell me, who do you think will take this race? There's, some young talent in here, but who do you think will take the Wood Memorial?
My man Sam's going to win. Oh, they didn't enter him. I would have picked my man Sam in the Wood Memorial, not shipping into this race because Chad Brown decides to leave Flexibility and Shaggoff in here, who maybe you view that as his top 2 contenders in his eyes. Maybe you view that as those 2 stakes horses at Aqueduct, so he just wanted to leave them there. Who knows what the political implications are for that, but there's a lot of speed in this race. Like we talked about Santa Anita Derby, Matt King Cole's a very fast horse. Shaggoff breaking from the rail, we're going to find out a lot about Shaggoff. He's going to have to be tactical from the rail. Outwork for Todd Pletcher's barn. Here's a colt that's doing awesome right now. If you talk to the clockers and anybody involved down there in South Florida and you ask them, who's the Pletcher 3-year-old to watch out for? It's Outwork. They love this colt. The question for him is going to be, how's he going to overcome Matt King Cole? All this speed that's lined up in this race, finally stretch it to 1 1/8 miles. I think it actually sets up for like I said, my man Sam, but he's not in here. So I'm going to take Chad Brown's other horse, Flexibility, to post a little upset here.
Wow.
I liked Outwork in here, but once Matt King Cole showed up, and I just kind of figured this race out from a handicapping standpoint, it's hard for me to see Outwork be able to go fast fractions, put away that speed, and hold off everybody. Flexibility has been a victim of pace in the withers. I don't think he's a top-class colt. He has to prove that to me, but I could see him closing in here behind a pretty good pace and winning this race off a short layoff.
All right, well, let's stay here in our own backyard and let's talk about the Toyota Bluegrass. When they moved this to dirt, this really became a serious Derby prep again. We see a horse in here, Brody's Cause. We know that he likes that surface. He won the Breeders' Futurity here at Keeneland. So he's been a little bit off form, but you got some horses in here that I know you really like. Tell me, who do you think will win Toyota Bluegrass?
What's wild for me is 3 closers in here. I mean, really 2, and you could say 3, Cherry Wine, if you want to add him to the mix. But you mentioned Brody's Cause and my man Sam. These are stone closers, 1-run horses at the end. I'm not so sure the pace is going to be as lively in here as the others. I mean, it is a 14-horse field. You have horses like Twiz stretching out that look very quick around one turn, looking for a kiss from the rail, stretching out around two. So, I mean, there's potential for speed in here, certainly. I do think the pace is going to be good enough for their kick, and that's what's important. So, you know I like my man Sam. He's 10-1 in the morning line in here from the 14 hole, and as long as Julian can find a ground-saving trip in the 14 hole, they got a pretty good run in that first turn. As long as he does not gets in a spot to where he loses a ton of ground and there's enough pace in front of him, I think he'll prove best in here. Zulu's going to go for the trip that Carpe Diem went for last year. He's getting blinkers on for a little more focus. I think you're going to see him stalk and try to pounce and prove to be the best horse in here for Ty Pletcher. But I like my man Sam. He's in the top 5, so how can I not pick him in here?
Well, it's going to be an interesting weekend for sure. It'll be a lot of good races. You know, we're getting close now, man. The Derby's just a few weeks away, really.
And I think you're going to get a good comparison between my man Sam and Brody's Cause. Two one-run closers that we obviously think very high of. You'll get to compare them side by side and sort of see their performances, because Dale Roman has said Brody's Cause is trained as well as any 3-year-old he's ever had at this point in the spring. That's a mouthful. So I think it's a very live race, the Bluegrass.
All right, thank you, Joel. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll see how JC's new #1 does this weekend.